Hello, everybody. My name is David Ruff. We're going to be talking why the U.S. Fed can control everything. Their federal bank holds all the keys because the entire world depends on them. We're going to be getting into a little bit of why, a little bit of history, and the three reasons why we got to pay attention to what is happening to them. You guys, my name is David Ruff. I operate in the beautiful city of Toronto, Canada. We run 4 different businesses. We have a real estate brokerage that we run here. We also have bought a lot of real estate. We've built properties before. We've bought and flipped them. We've wholesaled them. We've done a little bit of everything. So we know real estate very, very well. We know the whole game between arbitrage and negative yielding rates. If you want to know more about that, we had a video about that. So you guys, when we're going to go on and talk about this negative yielding rates and all this, we have to understand what this means and the power that the U.S. central bank holds. Listen, I'm from Canada. Why on earth would I be paying attention to the U.S.? Because in 1945, after the worlds collided together and had a big war, my grandfather fought in that war. At the end of it, they all got together in New Hampshire in the United States, and they all decided, okay, guys, the United States is going to be king of the earth and dominate it, to the ends of the earth, like everywhere. Everything's going to be based on the US dollar. So that was the decision made then. And now all of our banks around the world, all of our trading is all done in US dollars. We need to pay attention to them. Whatever happens to them happens to the rest, right? They say the US catches a cold, the rest of the world catches a flu. Okay, you guys, I could see the United States from my house, man. You could see it across the water at night. Very, very close in Canada. Everything we make goes to the United States. So let's look at this article. I found a couple points in it. I want to know if you guys agree with me. It's in the article, theconversation.com. The reason is 3 reasons why the U.S. Federal Reserve Bank holds the world in its hands. So it says inflation is a global problem. Well, duh, right? At the end of August, it was 8.3% in the US, 9.1% in the euro. We know from being in Canada, we were at 7% now. 20% in Nigeria. Oh my God. 25% in Malawi, 30% in Ethiopia and Ghana. And listen, guys, this is not an extensive list. If you think that an 8% is terrible in North America, imagine other places like Venezuela, Lebanon, all over the place. They're having real bad. Turkey, Russia. We're talking 20s, 30s, 50s, 70s, 80s, like crippling, finished. Fiat currency is going to go into a debt crisis all over the world. So before the health crisis, all countries were printing about the same amount of money, right? If he did it, I can do it. They keep printing money because rich people, rich companies, wealthy individuals get more and more money through inflation, right? That what Jason Hartman always says, debt-induced debt destruction. So as you get more of it, you pay off that debt with cheaper dollars in the future, which makes your debt even cheaper and cheaper. So that is a cool thing for some people, but for the majority of us, inflation will destroy us. The entire middle class, the entire lower class, anybody who's working becomes poor with this type of stuff. So we have to always pay attention to that in relative terms. The United States has printed a ghastly amount of money, 40% or something more money, maybe even 50% more. It was just crazy. Remember, like we printed double the currency just since the health crisis started. We printed just as much currency then than we did in the other 100 years before that. Unbelievable. But here is the thing. Why didn't the country collapse? Because all the other countries did the same or worse. So the way I look at it, it's the cleanest toilet in a public bathroom. That's it. A whole row of toilets, right? And you go by and dodgy, and there's one that was kind of just medium. That's the US dollar. But right now, it's the best they got. And it runs the entire world. Okay, let's get back in the article, this conversation.com. So I was just saying these other countries, Ghana, Nigeria, Ethiopia, terrible inflation right now. But here is the horrifying part. By the end of the year, 30 million more Africans will be unable to afford fuel for cooking, just basic cooking. The World Bank estimates that the number of Africans living in extreme poverty will increase from 424 million all the way to 463 million by the end of the year. This is terrible. And this is where our food shortages are going to come up. You and I in Canada or the United States have the benefit of being able just to maybe pay more for the same cooking oil or rice or whatever it is, grains, but there's going to be tens of millions more people starving at the lower end. They're the ones who will be suffering, unfortunately. And so if we jump back into this article, there is no agreement on why this is happening. Some argue that it is primarily a supply side problem, which I think is kind of crazy. Others maintain that the primarily a consequence of loose monetary policies of the leading central bank, like the U.S. Federal Reserve. For a number of years, they have kept interest rates low and engaged in quantitative easing. Do you remember what quantitative easing is? Quantitative easing is massive money printing money to the moon, tons and tons of it, right? That is what it makes inflation really, really bad. And so they are trying to squash demand right now by taking all the money out of your pockets through interest rates so that you have nothing left to go buy anything, because that's how they're going to trim down the price. So the idea of supply side economics, which I am firmly in that camp, they say that, let's read here. No agreement on why it happens. Some say it's a supply side. The supply chains caused by the effects of the COVID pandemic and the war in Ukraine helped reduce the supply of goods like fuel, fertilizer, and forcing prices up. Okay. This is all of this. Fuel prices have gone up. Fertilizer has gone up. There's a lot of environmental things that have happened. So if we had more stuff, yes, I do agree, but not always is it one thing. It doesn't have to be one thing happening, right? Where it's just because we don't have the stuff. More than one thing can happen, right? If you're in a fight, more than one person can punch you in the face at the same time. So we have at the same time of a lot of the stuff that is made over in China and Russia and fuel and fertilizer and food and all this other stuff. They've cut off those supplies, problem number one, at the same time that the banks are printing hundreds of billions of dollars of paper currency units and pushing them out in the market. Two things happening at the same time. Big, big issues. Okay, so if we continue, two things can be true at the same time. The two groups, the article continues, also differ in how to manage the problem. The first group argues that the diminishing as the supply side issues are resolved, they maintain that current high prices will incentivize companies to increase production. Listen, you guys, most of these companies are overseas. It's as small potatoes. It's country against country. It's fight for the reserve currency. The increased availability of goods like food, fuel, and fertilizer will ultimately lead to the prices and inflation falling. This also kind of makes me a little bit mad because it incentivizes, it tells us that, oh, the companies have this magic button, and if they would only click the magic button on, all of this food would magically come out the other side, and all of this fuel would magically come out, and all of that. Like, you can't print that. Of course, the governments can push a button and create bank reserves by the trillions, as we've seen in the past couple of years. But you can't push a button and create food. We got to go get fertilizer, get seeds, plant it, spend a year tending to the soil, and then pull it off. Food has to be a long-term plan, right? It can't just automatically, it's going to create out of thin air. It takes a lot of planning. And they are telling a lot of farmers in Canada, in the Netherlands, you're not allowed to plant any food anymore. You're not allowed to have cattle anymore. But then there's a lot of other countries that have had massive natural disasters. Pakistan, India, right? South Africa. A lot of other places have no food left anymore. So this is a multiplicity of things happening all at once. The second camp argues that the central banks should raise interest rates and unwind quantitative easing. That means like less money printing. They argue that these actions will make things more expensive for companies, households, and governments to borrow, and in turn will slow the economy down and reduce demand and drag down inflation. This makes me very, very mad because it's always, like I said, more than one thing happening at the same time. So we have no food available or being grown, and the price of everything, because they printed so much money, is way up. So now I might pay double because there's not as much food, and then I have to pay double again because the money isn't worth anything. I may be in a position where I'm paying 2x, 3x, 4x for food. This is not unheard of. This has happened many times in the past. It sure looks like we're going to be looking at that. We're going to be seeing some of those answers in the next 6 weeks as we find out how much the Northern Hemisphere was able to make through a war, through a lot of natural disasters. Let's hope that we made enough. Okay, so if we jump back into the article, this is how the Africa is going to suffer and how America has the world, in their grips. It says the US dollar is the world's most important currency. In 2021, it accounted 2021. Okay, this isn't long ago. 59% of global foreign reserves. It's a small country on the world stage, right? A third of a billion. 2021 accounted for 59% of global reserves. 70% of all trade invoices were in US dollars. 60% of both deposits and loans denominated in non-local currencies. In 2019, it was involved in 80% of the exchange transactions on the world. I need you to understand how important that is. That a small country, relatively, from the size of the planet, has 80% of this, 70% of that, 69% of that, 50, all these different high percentages. It is the king right now. But the fight for money is going to continue on, right? As big think tanks like the IMF, International Monetary Fund, or the World Economic Forum, they are trying to give their ideas of the Great Reset to all the governments, right? They want to control how the money is spent. There's a lot of crypto type dollars like the US Fed coin and the Canadian coin. There's over 90 countries looking into that. The BRICS countries want to create their own type of currency. There's a big fight right now that hasn't happened in a generation since 1945, Bretton Woods. Now, everybody's trying to be able to control the money. Remember, you control the food, you control the people, but if you control the money, you control the world. Henry Kissinger said that many years ago, and it can't be truer today. So the U.S. runs everything, and that's why I want you guys to pay attention to this, because this means everything. Now, the world is going to continue to fight about this. They're going to continue to fight about money. We do see some articles. I saw this from the UM chief that is asking to tax fossil fuel profits for climate change. Now, when you come to an article like this, this is where you have to think about it in the long term. There is no company without customers. There is none. All companies, service or product, all companies have customers. So when you increase the taxes or the costs on that good to the company, they have to pass it along to the customers. So this idea of taxing these mythical companies and just get money from them without it hurting the public is daydreaming, okay? When you increase the taxes on the company, it's just going to pass along, and when you go fill up your car, it's going to be more expensive. No matter how you slice this, if this government pays for it or this company pays for it, or it doesn't matter who pays for it, the governments, doesn't matter where the money, it always comes back on the consumer, you and I, who use the stuff. So the prices of things could go higher when you see an article like that. In addition, we saw another article that came out. This is on theguardian.com. The number of global ultra high net individuals hits another record. And so we're going to continue to see this, because as the world continues down this road, we see more and more centralization, meaning the power and the money is sitting in fewer and fewer hands. Like, we have more people like that. Think of Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, Elon Musk, billionaires that have so much money and such a large poor class, and not as many middle class anymore. Usually we had a small poor class, a small rich class, and a very large, healthy, vibrant middle class. They're the ones that pay all the taxes. They're the ones that do all the work. So if you smash down that middle class to nothing, the economy doesn't work anymore, right? So that is what we're heading into, is more centralization as far as the money. So there's just going to be a few very rich, wealthy individuals with a lot of poor. It looks like that's going to continue that trend. In addition, we can see the trend of those interest rates going to be higher and inflation sticking around for a long, long time. Listen, the US dollar is the king right now. This is why everybody, doesn't matter what country you're in, should be paying attention to this. It's not because it's fun. It's not because this is like light bedtime reading, but this is because it affects your family. It affects what you can buy. It affects the prices. Go ask anybody who's having rampant inflation. Most of the African countries, or Turkey, Venezuela, like I was saying, Lebanon, Russia, ask them how inflation has hurt them. We had friends that came from Eastern Europe that were crushed several times because of inflation. So I want you to go and find somebody who has lived through it and ask them what lessons that they learned. You will learn a wealth of knowledge from these people. I don't want to get squashed. I don't want you to get squashed. This is where we have to diversify ourselves and getting a little bit out, having good like stockpiles of stuff, food for yourselves. Get some cans, some rice, some beans, some food just in case. Have some water for yourself in case you're living in an area that might run out of water or have polluted water with a natural disaster. Have some batteries, some electricity there for you. Have some stuff in your home. Have some gold and silver. Have a little bit of Bitcoin and Ethereum. Get some of your money out of the banks. Have some cash floating around somewhere. My mom just had a massive power outage for 4 days. All banks are shut. Good thing that she kept some $5 bills laying around so she could still go buy some stuff. We got to think proactively here, but here is the good news. All of this bad news, David. What is the good news? The good news is we are entering in time where things like homes that we want, the real estate, could be at some of the best prices ever. You should be going shopping right now and just picking out the properties that you want, waiting for the price to drop enough until it's a good time to buy. Anyway, you guys, I want you to continue to succeed. I want you to crush it out there. Continue to be pushing, educating yourself. Try and read a book a week, you guys, like I do. I've been doing it for 20 years. I suggest that you do that. All the cheat codes to life are in books. Okay. I love you guys. I'm really here for your health, wealth, and happiness. Please remember to like and subscribe to this. Share it with a friend that might help them out. We really want to grow the channel and try and get our word out there. Wish you the very best. Hope you have a great night. Thanks so much for sticking around. If you like that video, you might like this one and maybe something like that.